Would you like me to stop sharing my screen?
That far. I didn't get anything new. No new insights. City Council Committee on Ordinances, Licenses, and Legal Affairs co-post for the Committee of the Whole met in Council Chambers on Monday, June 23rd, 2025 at 6 p.m. for the purpose of discussing the matters listed below. Notice this meeting was posted on May 14th, 2025 at 12:55 p.m. In attendance, we have Councilor from the Committee on Ordinances, Licenses, and Legal Affairs. We have Councilor Cohen, Councilor Jerslow, Councilor Morsillo. We also have from the Committee of the Whole, Councilor Merkel, Councilor Watsonfeld, Councilor Harvey, and Council President Prosnewski. And from the city, we have Assistant Transportation Director Christina Hodge and Lieutenant Tucker from Salem PD. So we are discussing today no right turn on red. Just as a reminder, this is an order that was brought in by Councilor Morsillo 2 years ago, potentially 2 years ago. It's had several meetings with OLA and joint meetings with the Traffic and Parking Commission and individual meetings with the Traffic and Parking Commission to go over these various intersections. And what is before us here tonight is the final recommendations from the Transportation Commission on specific intersections for no right turn on red. So we will open this up to Christina Hodge, who has David Kucharski's presentation that he was to deliver to us earlier this year, and then to the council and specifically to the ward councilors to express any questions or issues they have with the recommendations. So I'll turn it over to Christina.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Christina Hodge. I'm the Assistant Transportation Director. And these are some slides that I actually helped pull together, so I'm a little familiar with how they go. But just for everyone's background, as Councilor Harworth mentioned, this originally kicked off in the winter of 2024, so we met with joint OLA and Transportation Commission 3 times to discuss the various intersections throughout the city, breaking them down into sort of areas of the city to look at one time per meeting. And then those conversations came back to the Transportation Commission, where they discussed further in more detail wherever there might have been issues where there was not total agreement on some items. So that was those items were voted on, and then that is what has been created in the package that's in front of you for this evening. So just to remind everyone a little bit of the background with the characteristics that we considered when we were developing these recommendations all that time ago. We went into crash history at the intersections, as well as looking more detailed into the crash history and whether or not the absence of a no right turn on red restriction would have been a contributing factor or not. We looked at the pedestrian volumes for the crosswalk activity at the adjacent crosswalks within the intersection, and whether or not there would be conflicting right turn vehicles in an area with heavy pedestrian activity. And then also intersection geometry and sightlines is a key factor when determining right turn on red restrictions and recommendations. You want to be sure that you have ample sight distance on either side of the vehicle to make an educated decision on whether or not you should complete your turn or enter into a crosswalk. So the following few slides are just maps showing how we broke down all of the intersections in Salem and what the ordinance was for either whether it was signed, not signed, in the ordinance, not in the ordinance, and then the number of crashes is within the intersection itself, the number in the circle. So it's quite small for those of you looking at the screen right here. This was in the email that we sent late last week. So I will just go through these somewhat quickly, as you should all be familiar, but I can go back to any individual location if needed. We looked all along Highland Avenue, the approaches leading to Highland Avenue. And then I believe one change that Lieutenant Tucker and I noted when we discussed earlier today, and I'll actually go back a slide. Nope, froze for a second. One thing that we did notice as we revisited since that original package, the intersection of First Street at Traders Way, due to some recent bicycle buffered bike lanes with just paint only. We were revisiting that intersection, so I believe there might have been a supplemental ad in an email chain that we found through David Kaczarski's correspondence with Eileen. So we can discuss that further as well. So that's all I have for the presentation. I guess I can open it up to questions from the councilors.
Sure. I'll note for those folks who are on Zoom that we are discussing no right turn on red here, and that we just received a presentation from Christina Hodge. I think you may have missed the audio from about 30 seconds to a minute of that presentation. Councilor Morsillo.
Thank you, Chair. So when we went through this last year in OLA with the Transportation Commission here, we got through everything except downtown, and then it moved over to the Transportation Commission. So I think it would be best if we really focus on that downtown section, especially since Councillor Watson-Felt is here. And so that's, and Councillor Cohen, but you're easier to get to a meeting than Councillor Watson-Felt is. So if we could focus on that map with all the details for the downtown, that would be really good.
Sure. Let me find that. I'll try to blow this up as well.
Councilor Watson-Felt.
Thank you. I think as we work through these, I'm just curious to know specifically why the recommendation based on the data that you collected. So all of those points you showed in the presentation, which are all fantastic and really important in their own unique way. I'd love to understand the nuance as we look at each of these. In this case, for example, in this case, accidents, in this case, visibility, in this case, whatever. It's just so I can better understand your thinking. Thanks.
All right, so is it all of the downtown intersections? Okay, all right. So starting at Webb and Bridge.
We can go through these one at a time, and do you want to see all? You want to discuss each of these intersections individually, Councilor Watson-Felt?
Sorry, thank you, Chair. Yeah, I'd like to better understand their thinking around each of the recommendations. And I think we can keep the conversation specific to the recommendations of ordinance changes. I don't think we need to go through no change, that sort of thing. But where I'm looking at here, the inserting language and these specific intersections on Bridge Street, specific intersections on Essex, at Boston, specific intersections, all of these on, all of them on Essex, I'd like to review. And where? Yeah, the bridge. Oh, at Hawthorne Boulevard.
So, yeah, maybe you want to start at the top there, at the top of Bridge Street onto...
And we can look at just the inserting language if you'd like, if that makes more sense, yeah.
Okay. So starting at the top of this image, the intersection as you travel over the bridge to meet the bypass road, it currently is signed, no right turn on red. This is also a double lane approach. From a safety perspective, we would recommend to keep the signage and add it into the ordinance to make it enforceable.
And that is specific to, because it's a double lane approach, so that's a safety concern?
Yeah, typically if you have two lanes traveling onto a roadway, there's a very similar example of this kind of similar format further down once you're into Beverly, right at the train tracks where the Burger King is. It's also a MassDOT intersection and they have no turn on red there. That's also related to the pattern in the traffic there. But it could cause issues if you have someone in either lane that decides to pull forward, but they can't quite see the oncoming cars, and especially if there's a car that is traveling at a pretty fast speed trying to make the light at that intersection traveling northbound to Beverly. It could cause a safety issue, not being able to see. Yeah.
On that one too, that's a DOT signal, and we had them change the round red lights to red arrows to try to firm that up, but we should have this in the ordinance. It meets some of the requirements. It's a offset angle, 2 lanes in both directions, 2 lanes both going north with bad sight lines and higher speed approach.
Thank you.
So this is I believe the fourth one down in the ordinance here, intersection of Veteran Memorial Bridge. Any concerns or questions here? Looking in the inserted language here, I believe it's the 4th one down here. Councilor Prosniewski.
Thank you, not being a member of the committee. Mr. Chair, does it, to Lieutenant Tucker, the 0, O stands for?
That would be the total number of crashes in log for that intersection.
Thank you.
0, yep.
That's what I thought, thank you.
And just to repeat, what we have here is we have intersections that are signed but have no ordinance. We have intersections that have an ordinance but no sign, and we have intersections that have signs and ordinances, and some that have neither. In this case, we have an intersection with a sign but no ordinance, and the recommendation is to add the ordinance. No other concerns? We'll move along. I know we have several to cover here, so we can scooch down if there's no concerns here.
So the next intersection is Bridge at Webb. The recommendation is at the Webb Street approach to the intersection to add both a sign and language restricting right turn on red here, and then in the northbound approach on Bridge Street to add what currently exists to the ordinance. And the 0 in the middle indicates 0 crashes between January 2023 and I guess the date that this was originally scheduled to be discussed.
Seeing no concerns, we'll move along.
So traveling to the right of page, and I know this is an intersection that had quite a bit of discussion at the Transportation Commission level, so I'm interested to hear everyone's thoughts. So on Webb Street, heading eastbound, we recommend to add signage and ordinance, no right turn on red. In the opposite direction, heading westbound towards Bridge Street, we recommend no change to what is currently there. And then southbound from Satella Lane, we recommend no change.
Councilor Jerslow.
Thank you, Chair. So just there will be a no right on red in front of Ziggy's, taking a right onto Essex Street.
Correct.
That's good. Thank you.
Seeing no other concerns, we'll move along.
So I will travel back over to Bridge Street, where the bypass road meets Bridge Street, where it heads down into Business District. So currently, there is no change from the bypass, no change from Bridge Street. We would recommend adding signage and ordinance language at the approach from the apartment building complex. The driveway, yes, which is a signalized approach. And then no change in the, I guess, northbound or outbound direction on Bridge Street heading towards the bypass road.
So this is just coming out of the driveway, correct? Okay. All right. Councilor Watson-Felt.
Just to clarify, maintaining that allowed right on red onto bridge, right, from bridge to...
It would be allowed.
Thank you.
Okay. We'll keep going.
All right, traveling just to the south of this intersection where Bridge Street meets St. Peter's Street, we are recommending no change to the Bridge Street northbound approach and St. Peter's approach. So nothing will be added to the ordinance and no signage would be added.
Did you say there's no changes recommended here?
No change.
Okay. We can just do the ones that have a recommended change unless anyone else wants to discuss some that were where they were not recommended.
You want to run down the list of the map around? If you want to,
Yeah, we could run down.
because these are all the...
Okay.
Would that make easier? Nothing easy.
Is the recommendation, Lieutenant Tucker, to start in the ordinance and move our way down that way?
He was going to go down the list rather
I think
than the map.
I think that would be preferable for me.
Okay. Can you guide me, drive me on the map? Okay.
Yeah, and if we could get to the map where it
Left
is
right here.
visualized.
Boston Bridge and Proctor.
Boston Bridge and Proctor.
Down left corner.
I think I need to go into a different map.
Oh, maybe. Yeah, you're probably right.
That's it.
All right. Right here, right?
Yep.
So currently, the way, I lost my key. So green means in the ordinance and signed. So right here, we are recommending no change in ordinance and signed.
Part of the map, I'm sorry. I thought that was... So we should be at the, if we're going down the list, if you look on page 2 of the ordinance, this would be Boston Street at Proctor Street and Goodhue.
Correct, which is,
I mean, this is probably the more logical way to do it if we're going to change anything.
but why is it in here if it's in ordinance and signed?
It's all right, yeah.
This is recommending a change. So I just want to make sure we're in the right spot of in the map here. Because we don't have street names.
I reviewed it earlier, and I think what it is it's just poorly worded, the way that it's written from back in like 1980. No offense to anyone. So I think we're going to repeal it and then just send it back in, but word it a little better.
Okay.
That's how I took it.
This, so this intersection may also have when Proctor ran the opposite direction. I know that there was an older stop sign ordinance that we have since removed at the Proctor Street approach, so it's possible that there have been some traffic pattern changes here that were not recognized in the ordinance. So this would be just cleaning up what exists today. It's not changing anything, so that's why it's indicated as no change in every direction. It's in the ordinance and signed, but it may be cleaning up some of the Proctor Street language. Dropping.
Okay, and then we've already covered bridge at IU Memorial Drive, and so the next one would be bridge at Flint Street. Councilor Watson-Felt.
Thank you, Chair. Point of clarification. So just let's take a step back, because I think it makes sense for us to just orient ourselves to what we're reading here. So on Section 1, we have repealing language, and on Section 2, we have inserting language. It would be really helpful, in addition to my request to make sure I understand what the source of your recommendation, the reasoning behind your recommendation, to understand which of these go together, right? So some of them are paired. Some of them is where we're taking something out, we're putting something back in. So specifically, I've only just recently looked at the Boston Street one here because it's honestly not entirely my ward, but the Boston Street one, Bridge Street, Goodhue, Proctor, right? All of that, does that correlate, the repealing language, does that correlate to the inserting language? Okay, so as we work through this set by set, I think that would be helpful for everyone to understand. We are taking something out, we are putting something in. Does that make sense?
Right. We can bring that up. In some, you could see there's a lot less repeal.
A lot more inserting, yeah. I know, I just want to make sure that where they are paired, that we're thinking about these holistically, and we understand what it is that we're approving. Thanks.
So yes, for the Boston Street, the first two paragraphs would be removed and then inserted the first paragraph of the insertion section. So it would take two existing, somewhat poorly written ordinances into one cohesive intersection. So I believe we went to Flint Street from here. So this is new, not removing. So no change on Bridge Street heading southbound. No change on Flint heading towards Bridge from Mac Park. From the east heading west, we recommend to add signage and ordinance language. And Bridge Street coming from the south heading northbound, we look to add to the ordinance.
So just to be clear, coming off of Flint, headed north on Bridge, we're adding an ordinance and a sign, or it's proposed to add an ordinance and a sign, and coming off of Bridge and up Flint, turning right, we're just adding the ordinance because it's already signed. Is that correct?
There's already an existing sign, correct?
If I may.
Councilor Watson-Felt.
Thank you. At that, add to the ordinance that pink arrow taking the right onto Flint. I am curious as to why you would prohibit there. Is it a sightline issue?
I believe there were bike accommodations alongside that lane, which is typically something you would like to consider, which is what we have since considered again on First Street, where the bikes become in the travel lane itself and they're not vertically separated.
Okay, thank you.
Any concerns on that intersection? I see none. So we've already done Bridge Street at the bridge, and then we would be Bridge Street at Washington Street.
So Bridge Street at Washington Street, heading in the eastbound direction on Bridge Street, there is a sign. We recommend adding a sign. It is currently in the ordinance and not signed. And then on Washington Street at that approach, it is not in the ordinance, but it is signed.
From Washington onto Bridge is signed.
It is signed. There's a sign out there today.
And it's not in the ordinance?
It's not in the ordinance.
And then the other one was where the slip lane is?
I believe so.
Do you want to prohibit a right-hand turn on the slip lane?
There is ordinance language, but there's not a sign.
That one, if I can steal it. That one there is a right turn on red after stop.
Yes.
Sign. I think we want to retain that. Correct me if I'm wrong. I think we want to keep that.
Yeah, I would suggest I would like to see the retaining of being able to proceed right at that intersection on the slip lane after stop.
So that's not, we're not changing anything with that slip lane. I think we're just adding an ordinance, Washington onto Bridge, to reflect the sign that's there.
So the addition of Washington onto Bridge is, I assume, later on here?
No, it's that item right there.
It's what?
It's this one we're on.
Oh, I see it. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Councilor Watson-Felt, did you have a question or concern about that addition of that into the?
I just want to make sure that there's no language in here that I'm missing that indicates the removal of the right after stop on the slip lane. Okay. Great.
No, I think we're just proposing to keep the right turn on red sign, which is why it's spelled out that way on the map. It says right turn on red sign. So it's not a no right turn on red. It's right turn on red after stop.
Thank you.
Councilor, I just want to clarify real quick, sorry. I'll get to Councilor Merkel. Right now, there's a sign there, I believe, that says right turn after stop, right? So this would say no right turn whatsoever.
No, we're going to keep the right turn after stop. We're just, on the map, it's reflected that it actually is there, it exists. There's no ordinance attached to that. It's really the absence of an ordinance, but it's just a reminder that you have to stop at least before you proceed.
From northbound Washington Street on to east, okay, I'm sorry, I'm looking at the wrong portion here.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Councilor Merkel.
Thank you, Chair Hepworth, not being a member of the committee. Yes, sorry, I need clarity on that. So when you're coming down Washington and you turn right onto Bridge, that right now has the no turn on red, and then often the green arrow will go when the lights sync up for that. The one that's after turn allowed after stop, that's coming up Bridge when you turn and it's angled onto Washington. Yeah, okay. Yeah, no, that makes sense, and I do support adding the other one to the ordinance. I'm right at that intersection. It's extremely dangerous because they try to make that yellow light coming up Bridge, so I appreciate that that's no turn on red. And quick comment too, I appreciate as someone who uses the bike lanes that you're mindful where it looks like the bike lane is merging into where cars are going to take a right turn on red. Yeah, that's a recipe for disaster, so I appreciate that being factored in.
Any other questions or concerns here? Okay, and we've already covered the intersection of Webb Street. No other concerns or questions there. That was the Ziggy's one. Then on to Colonial Road.
That might be another map, too.
The intersection with between Colonial Road and Jefferson Avenue and Dove Avenue.
I think it's this one.
No, that's Jefferson. You might have gone over it. Sorry.
This is Highlands.
Hope if I can see that far. Might be right.
Oh.
Is it right there with the?
Is Dove Avenue the hospital? Is that correct? Yeah. Okay.
No, that's not it, is
I
it?
think it's in this corner. I can't see because my,
I can't see that far.
I think it's over here. Maybe?
That's not it. No, that's not it, is it?
Yeah, because Jefferson Ave comes up.
Is that Jackson?
Should we had labeled streets on there?
Maybe I was wrong, maybe.
I feel like it's right here.
Is that it there? No, that's,
If only I had street labels.
that's Loring. Is that Loring?
It's, yeah, the 4 there on the right.
Is it?
I think
It is for?
Councilor Marcillo just said that.
That is it,
Okay.
okay.
Yep. That's the hospital to the left there.
Can't see that far, sorry.
All right, so this intersection with the number 4 is the one that we're discussing now, Colonial Road. So no changes on Jefferson Ave northbound or southbound, no change on Dove at the hospital. side of Jefferson Avenue, but we are proposing to add signage at Colonial Road where it meets Jefferson, and that currently is in the ordinance but not signed.
So I guess in the change that we're looking at right now is showing from westbound Colonial Road to northbound Jefferson Avenue, right turn on red prohibited. This is inserting language, but you're saying this is already in the ordinance?
The sign, or
If it's just a sign, you
yes,
don't need to.
we are adding a sign, and it's in the ordinance. Let me see if it appeared in the first section. It appears in the section where we are repealing ordinances. The second from the bottom, at Colonial Road and Hospital Entrance, westbound Colonial Road onto northbound Jefferson Avenue. And here,
So I guess I would just guess that potentially the map is wrong, that we're actually adding a sign and an ordinance to this section here. Is that correct? Or
I think what it is the original ordinance language references Jefferson, but the control isn't on Jefferson, it's on Colonial. So it should be categorized under Colonial Road. That's probably why it's repealing and reinserting under Colonial.
So this is just, this would be viewed as cleanup language.
Yeah.
This is already prohibiting a red. Got it, okay. This is what Christina said was important to have you here, Lieutenant Tucker, to have the history behind all of this. Any, Councilor Mersul?
Thank you. Can you just tell me what the 4 directions are then? You have no change. Are right-on reds allowed at that intersection, except now we're not going to allow it from Colonial Road onto Jefferson?
yeah, as it currently exists, it's only restricted at Colonial Road, if I'm reading this correctly, but it is not signed.
And Lieutenant Tucker, do you remember any data from those 4 accidents? Is it mostly because that driveway is just so uncontrolled?
Yeah, that's a combination of bad sight lines. The geometry of it is pretty bad in terms of the sidewalk placement and everything. I'm just trying to glance, but if I recall right, the crash history, it's everything in the intersection, and I don't believe any of them had anything to do with right on red. Like I see one here that it was just simply a, let me see here. That one, yeah, that one didn't have anything to do with right on red. That's the only one I'm seeing, but when we looked at all the crashes for that intersection, we felt that that wasn't the right on red wasn't the issue on those 3 approaches.
Councilor Cohen?
Yeah, it's not my ward, but when I saw this one, I was thinking that maybe it's because there's so many trucks leaving. And they're coming out of Amazon and probably most of the time taking a right on, so, silly.
Councilor Mersul?
Yeah, and to that point, they're coming from Jefferson into Colonial too, and I'm just wondering if we're really solving the problem here. Should that also have a no right on red? Are we creating issues? Or are they ducking in that other driveway that's not really at the intersection?
I think some cars probably take that first driveway. Amazon uses the second driveway.
The Amazon trucks don't use that other driveway?
I don't know for sure, but it wouldn't. Yeah, I suppose if they hit the red light, they might go in there to get in quick. But if there's any cars parked in there, I've turned in there myself, and I don't know how busy the parking lot is now. But if there's a lot of cars in there, it turns into a maze to get over to.
would it be fair to say that a right turn out of Colonial Road onto Jefferson would be dangerous to all involved, including vehicles? A right turn from Jefferson into Colonial would only potentially be dangerous to a pedestrian, but it's not a pedestrian-heavy space that you
Right. It's not that heavy, and when you're coming from Jefferson right onto Colonial, you can see, clearly in all directions. When you're on Colonial, the growth in that marshy area, it's pretty much a wall of greenery, so you really can't see anyone coming.
Any other concerns on Colonial? Councilor Prozniewski.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to Lieutenant Tucker. So historically, that intersection hasn't changed in many, many years. It's still the same intersection when Hamlet and Hayes was the chemical plant and only a few workers came and gone. Now we have Amazon trucks coming and going. Let's double it up and say now the new emergency entrance and exit to the hospital has added a tremendous amount of traffic. So I heard, and I guess you can call it rumors, that whole intersection was about to be revamped, specifically after they changed the entrance to the hospital. I don't know exactly who was playing which role in it. I was under the assumption that the hospital had some kind of designs to make that a safer intersection because it hasn't been changed. Have you heard anything about any changes? Because obviously, because of what's been described, that's not a safe intersection anymore because of the amount of new traffic.
Right. Now that you mentioned it, I had forgotten that. I did hear that, and that was a couple of years ago. So I think that might be in the works.
Yeah, I can speak to this too. Originally, we were looking at the Jefferson Avenue corridor in that section from Dove and Colonial down to Wilson. We were going to essentially look at the system rather than just individual intersections. And unfortunately, when the pedestrian was struck and killed at Jefferson Wilson, that expedited the need for design at just Jefferson and Wilson, whereas if we had the other intersections along the way, it would have extended the timeline. So although the plans were already in the works for the corridor, we shortened the project to just focus at one individual intersection to make improvements where the neighborhood had clearly been vocal about the need, and we were aware that there was a need there. So that still is sort of lingering in concept design phase, has not necessarily been pushing forward at this time. I know we had spoken with the property owner at Colonial right there on the corner, talked about some driveway changes potentially as he has access on Jefferson Avenue and Colonial. But from those discussions lately, I have not been proceeding forward with more design projects. But that we have it at concept level, not to say changes with the hospital and whatever Amazon might decide in the future may push that forward. I know that we are also contemplating how the South Salem rail might tie into some of that as well. So that's definitely still on the table, but it's not something that's necessarily in the immediate pipeline.
It just seems like we're putting a very inadequate Band-Aid on an intersection that deserves to be completely revamped. So I think that's where we should be concentrating on is looking to the future with all the traffic that's going to be going over there, that maybe we should be putting that on the front burner instead of the back burner. Just my opinion. Thank you.
And there is, not to get totally off topic, there is a Jefferson Avenue study that is going to be underway with the planning department, so I believe that this is part of that study as well.
There's no other questions on Colonial Road. We'll move down to Derby. Derby with Congress Street and Hawthorne Boulevard. And I'll propose once we get to Highland Avenue, we'll skip over that just in the event that this stays in committee. And go over to Washington Street, but we'll cross that bridge when we get there. Derby Street.
Lafayette Street.
Yeah.
So for Derby Street, this is over at the corner of the South Harbor Garage, just to orient folks. In the northbound direction on Congress, we are proposing to add signage and ordinance to have no right turn on red. At the approach from Derby Street, we are proposing the same thing, ordinance and signage. On the opposite side of the intersection, we are proposing the same, add signage and ordinance. And then coming southbound at Hawthorne Boulevard, we're proposing to add ordinance language because there's currently already a sign in place.
Where is there already a sign in place? I'm sorry, say that again.
The southbound approach, Hawthorne Boulevard.
Oh, got it, okay. Councilor Gerslow.
Thank you, Chair. I have a problem with the northbound Congress Street onto eastbound Derby Street. It's a very wide intersection. There are no crashes there. I use that road a lot, and you can definitely see cars coming on your left taking a right from Congress onto Derby Street. I would propose putting a right turn on red after stop sign. I would be okay with that, but I think taking a right on red, especially people coming out of Shetland, they use that road coming from Vinnon Square area, coming home. A lot of people use that, and especially September, October, there's a huge line of traffic down Congress Street, and I think having no right on red would prevent and would cause a huge traffic tie-up. And I think it's safe. I mean, when I take a right, you can definitely see way down almost to Waters of Brown if a car is coming. I know there's already a sign coming down Hawthorne Boulevard taking a right onto Derby Street, correct? There's a sign there. That's okay. That doesn't seem to be a problem because there's 2 lanes, but I think that's going to cause a big issue. And where there's no crashes, the sight lines are good, I would think just a right on red after stop.
I'll just to be clear here, Councilor Gerslow, you're talking about northbound Congress Street onto eastbound Derby Street. The proposal here is right turn on red prohibited. Your recommendation is to not accept that. Is that correct?
But put a sign, right turn on red after stop. There's no signage there right now.
Councilor Merkel.
Thank you, Chair Hepworth, not being a member of committee. Just a couple things I would like to point out at the intersection in favor of the sign. It's very heavily pedestrian. We now have a visitor center there, if I'm correct on the intersection we're talking about. So it's definitely picked up pedestrian-wise there. There's also, bike lanes there, and it's very busy, and I have seen cars tend to go quickly because they're trying to get through the yellow light at that intersection. I'd have to say I'd err on the side of caution and support the no turn on reds. And personally, I find when we start having no turn on red, you look for the sign, there's not a sign, and then there's turn allowed after stop. I find that if you have one intersection with several different rules in place, it can get confusing because a lot of people go through the same intersections regularly getting around, and it's like, oh, is it when I go this way, it's stop, allowed after stop. If I'm going this way, it's allowed. The other direction, it's not allowed. So I also like to see some continuity at an intersection. So that's why, I would be in support of the no turn on reds there. Thank you.
Is there a question or comment on the side? Councilor Watson-Felt.
Just a comment that this is exactly why I want to know your thinking before comments begin, because you probably have a reason for this recommendation that as a counselor I'd like to really understand before I put on there my own personal experience, which is that I also too like to take the right hand there, but I won't if there's a really, really good safety reason not to. I do want to hear your thought on that one. It was the only one that caused me pause as well, Councilor Gerslow, and my concern is it might then divert traffic through the wharf, right, which I would contend may be even more dangerous from a pedestrian and vehicle maneuvering safety perspective. But again, you're the experts, so make it make sense. Thanks.
So all of those points were brought up when this was discussed at the Transportation Commission level, and The reason behind having all approaches be consistently no turn on red was because of the visitor center. There's the South Harbor Garage. There's bus drop-offs now at the visitor center. There's heavy pedestrian activity at that location. But on the flip side, commissioners also had the argument, well, you don't want to create a queue in the northbound approach and have people drive through the wharf. So there was all that discussion did happen, and this had to be revisited twice at a Transportation Commission level because there were some conflicting views and thoughts about this. So all of your thoughts are valid. There's no, I guess, exact science behind all of this. It's just what the data we had with the pedestrian levels being what they are during peak tourism, maybe not all times of the year, so there is a point there, but focused mostly on pedestrian volumes here.
A follow-up question to that point, Christina, two questions, I guess. One is this the sort of thing you would do seasonally? Would you restrict a right hand at any point just for a seasonal purpose? Okay, because I feel like to Councilor Merkel's point that
you would want it to be expected.
Yeah, and then the second question is: it sounds to me like this recommendation also ties to the tour bus ordinance. And so the thinking around that is we now have increasing pedestrian safety concerns that are coming with that ordinance. Would you say that that's the case as well, or is this separate from that?
I don't think it could necessarily be tied. It's more so in the sense that the visitor center is there and people are traveling to get information from that location, or just traveling to that corner to get their vehicle if they got a spot at South Harbor. That is a location that people may be traveling to and from Charlotte Fortin Park if there's activity, and then continuing up to the Common. So just the pedestrian desire lines are tying into play here.
Thank you for clarifying.
I'll get around to the other questions real quick. Can you just talk through the point that was made about Pickering Wharf? And I guess pedestrians, from my perspective, pedestrians seem to be a little more free-flowing around Pickering Wharf. And is that, if there's an increased chance that cars are cutting through there, is that more dangerous to a pedestrian than cars taking a right on that spot there? Can you just talk through that thinking just a little bit?
Sure. I mean, it's hard to predict what may or may not be a more dangerous situation, but people will always find the path of least resistance, and maps will always show them the quickest and easiest way to shortcut, hence our neighborhood traffic calming program. So if people see that there is a perceived wait, they may try to go through the wharf to shave off a few seconds of travel. I don't encourage that, obviously. It is more direct to stay on your route and travel at whatever wait you may experience with the delay of the signal. But it was something that was brought up as a concern from both the councilor and some commissioners.
I guess I'm just thinking about the kids getting on the boat for Children's Island, or the tourists waiting to get on the different cruises, and people sort of just walking around that area, versus a pedestrian light which is already signaled, so it's not like a Washington Street situation where people are just sort of walking at will. But Councilor Merkel, do you have a question, or is it Councilor Jerslow? Councilor Jerslow, and then Councilor Morsillo. Councilor Harvey.
Thank you, Chair. Not being a member of the committee. I have to agree with Councilor Jerslow on that. A no turn on red after stop sign would make more sense to keep the traffic flowing. Which brings me to my next question, and you kind of semi just hit on it. Has anybody talked with John Giardi in regards to traffic light timing? If we're going to be adding these stop signs or no turn on red signs, is anybody taking into consideration the timing changes of the lights to try to keep flow of traffic moving quicker, with that being said?
Did you talk to him?
No. We haven't spoken to him about that. I don't know where this intersection lies, if it's due for any retrofits or upgrades, it could stand to have some. There's some opportunities there. The Hawthorne Boulevard has an exclusive right turn. Well, Derby eastbound can turn left onto Hawthorne Boulevard. There might be a way to work in a phase for the other legs, for Congress and Derby westbound. This could also be a spot, we don't have the capacity yet, but there are signs where I'm a lot less concerned about a vehicle turning right on red unless there's pedestrians involved. There is technology out there for when a pedestrian activates the red light, a sign illuminates saying no turn on red. We looked into those, are shockingly expensive, so it's something that we might be able to do in the future. But to answer the basic question, I'm not aware of any planned upgrades for there, but there could be a good chance for it, it could be a good opportunity.
Councilor Jerslow, Councilor Morcillo, and then Councilor Cohen.
Thank you. I'll make it quick. That's what I was going to get at. In Beverly, they have those lights near the old shoe, and it seems to work pretty good. So I didn't know if the city, instead of putting this in the ordinance, wait and get one of those signs and try that. Thank you.
Councilor Morcillo.
Thank you, Chair. I would like to try this as it's written. I walk down there all the time. This is one of the top intersections where cars don't care if the walk signal's on. They do the right on red. This is a very highly pedestrian, whatever. There's a lot of pedestrians down there. That and Riley Plaza are like the biggies. And I walk down there all the time, and it's frustrating for pedestrians to sit there while the walk light's on and cars are just going through. Or, as was pointed out before, they're all rushing to try to make the light, and then they stop right on the crosswalk because they're trying to make it, and they're going to make that right on red as soon as they can. And it's just really frustrating to be a pedestrian in certain intersections in this town because it doesn't matter if the walk light's on. So I would like to try it. As easy as it is to put this in, if it really doesn't work, we can take it out. Also, cutting through Pickering Wharf, that's private property, right? They have a lot more stuff that they can do on private property to stop that from happening and to slow people down if that becomes a problem. But I would like to try it instead of saying, well, this could happen, that could happen, I don't know. I do agree that if we can ever get those lights that say no right on red because the cross signal's on, there's a lot of different places we could use that, including that slip lane from Bridge Street to Washington. I mean, again, that's a lot of pedestrians going across there, and we have this slip lane, which doesn't make any sense that you can just keep going. But my vote is to keep it in and give it a try and see what happens, and then make a better assessment about what's going on there. This is part of the, Derby Street is in line to get new lights that are all supposed to talk to each other and keep traffic flowing. Don't know the timeline, but that was the next corridor to happen, so if that helps.
Councilor Cohen.
Thank you, Chair. Councilor Morcillo kind of changed a little bit of my thinking, because I do think the pedestrian should be the first concern. I'm always either going straight through there or taking a right. Every day, I'm at least doing one of those. And one of the things I noticed, the reason that I think that right on red wouldn't be as bad is because the right lane to take a right only can fit like 3 or 4 cars, because there's the entrance from the bank. And then everyone who's backed up on Congress Street blocks people from getting in that right lane. So if people going straight from Congress to Hawthorne Boulevard, or taking a left to go towards towards more downtown, they block people from getting in the right turn lane. So I'm just reinforcing that there's not as many cars that are taking a right. I do have to say that I have personally circumvented that through Pickering Wharf many times. And to Chair Hepworth's point, there's always people walking in the middle of the street in Pickering Wharf, always. So they need to do something better there because people just like aimlessly walk through like it's not a street.
All right, we have Councilor Prosnowski.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I agree pretty much with Councilor Cohen, because I, too, living near Councilor Cohen, use that intersection many times a day. That's the way I head towards Beverly, whether it's heading up Cawthorn Boulevard or taking a right on Congress Street. And the safety concern is huge, because I do see vehicles. I've cut through the wharf myself to avoid traffic, but I've seen cars speed through Pickering Wharf. Even though it's private property, they speed right around that. Not only do they go through Pickering Wharf, sometimes they take a right, and then they take a left right in front of the hotel, and they go right out the front entrance of the hotel and take a right. That's done on a daily basis. Making that intersection more congested, I believe, is going to add to deter from the safety of the people that are walking in the wharf, especially in weather like this. You know, we can all talk about anecdotal, our own ideas about what's safe and what's not safe, but if you take a look at the data shows that there's been no incidents right now. So what are we doing? We're ignoring the data and taking a chance on pedestrian safety inside of private property. The Rockets aren't going to do anything for us. They're not going to put up people over there or barriers or something. That's just not going to happen. They took the trash barrels out. There's no trash barrels in Pickering Wharf because they didn't want to pay for the trash disposal. So we're not going to get any cooperation from that piece of private property. But what's going to happen is if we put up a no right on red, there will be more people cutting through their property. That's a fact. There will be more. It's a roll of the dice whether or not it's going to be a pedestrian safety hazard or not. I wouldn't want to be rolling those dice, so I would vote to just keep it as clear as it can be and leave it like it is, because the data shows we just haven't had an accident caused by a right on red over there. Thank you. And that goes with you know, some of the other intersections too. Let's take a look at the data. Thank you.
Councilor Watson-Felt.
I'm sorry, Chair. Thank you for my second comment on this. So this idea of a right after stop, theoretically, is an option. And similarly, the right from Hawthorne onto Derby, across from the visitor center, where, you know, when I'm down there at like 6 o'clock in the morning and there's nobody walking around and I'm sitting there like, I usually avoid it by cutting through other parts, right? Charter Street, down wherever, I can take the right, whatever. So I'm wondering if we should think through this one a little bit more. I don't want to be dismissive of the expertise and support a move to remove this, because I agree that it is a concern and that the pedestrians need to be centered. But I'm really torn because I understand the concerns also of the flow of traffic and the potential impact to pedestrians in the wharf and the hotel area. I know the wharf has got speed bumps, but it doesn't really stop people. So would that be a compromise solution to get something passed with the whole body, if that was? Is that a way forward, right? Rather than just allowing it to be right on red as it is today in that one spot.
Is that the sign, right turn on red after stop?
Yeah.
That one doesn't require any ordinance language. Just a reminder of what the law would be. Stop at that red light.
Right.
And you could proceed. So that it's just a reminder.
But with the sign, right? It would be so the process. If that were the will of the body, it would be a request to the department to put a sign there, but no ordinance change.
Correct.
Okay.
So we are on track here to be done by 10:30 p.m. tonight. I don't think we're going to be doing that.
Right.
So I think it's becoming clear that this may not be coming out of committee tonight. There could be a motion made on the floor by a member of the committee, Councilor Jerslow, who's also the ward councilor, if she would like to, on this. or we could come back to it and discuss it at the next meeting. But I don't know if you like to make a, Councilor Jerslow?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I'd like to make a motion to keep this one in committee.
Well, I'm sorry. We still have time. I'm not saying we want to leave right now. I'm saying that we probably will not get, we've gotten through 7 out of 30 so far. We'll probably not get through all 30 tonight.
Okay.
I would like to go a little bit longer if you guys would humor that. But I don't know if you wanted to make a motion to remove this, or if you want to take some time and let the committee take some time to look at it. It's up to you as the ward councilor and as a member of the committee. It would be removing northbound Congress Street onto eastbound Derby Street, right? It would just be that portion.
I mean, I would make a motion to, if they could put a sign there, I mean, I would be okay with that. Okay, then take it out. Yeah, I would say take it out then. I don't want to compromise.
Do you want me to bring that up?
So Councilor Jerslow moves to remove the language and northbound from Congress Street onto eastbound Derby Street from this section. I don't see a second. To be clear, I would second it for a vote, but I don't think we have the votes to get it out. I can second it for a vote, but I don't think we have the votes to get it out of here anyway, so I don't think it makes sense to do that. Okay, we'll move along. Any other Councilor Cohen?
Thank you, Chair Hapworth. I think to Councilor Watson-Feld's point, this needs a little more thought. I've been like really anxious to talk about one intersection. Could I?
We will get to Lafayette, I promise.
No, this is to Councilor Marcillo's point. I'm not sure, I just want to ask Christina and Hodge and Lieutenant Tucker, if you go down to Washington Street, Riley Plaza, New Derby and Norman Street.
We will get there eventually. Yeah. I'm not saying we're leaving now. I'm saying that we will not get through all 30 tonight, I think, on this pace right now.
There's a couple that I just
Okay.
focus.
We'll try to get to that tonight, too. Any other questions on Derby Street here? All right. We'll move on to Essex Street. And I'm going to try to get through all the Ward 2 if possible. Councilor Harvey.
Thank you, Chair, not being a member of the committee. I'm wondering if, like you just said, it's going to end up back in committee. Could we go over where they're adding signs and not necessarily just talking about putting it into the ordinance right away, so that we can all have a better idea of where new signs are going? Because it sounds to me like there's a lot of signs that are already there. They're just adding the ordinance to that particular sign. I'd like to see if we could figure out what new signs are being added that aren't already there first, so that we can then, I mean, 'cause the way I'm looking at it is, if a sign's already there and it's just a matter of language and ordinance, then why are we just continuously talking about those same signs? Why can't we jump to where they're adding new signs into the ordinance?
So you're just saying less conversation where we're adding ordinance.
We're just adding it to the ordinance,
Yeah.
and more conversation as to where they're adding new signs, so that we can all get a
Signs
better
and-
grasp on it.
Signs and ordinances, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
That's just a suggestion.
All right, we'll move on to Essex Street. Intersection with Boston Street.
So this is currently in the form of 2 ordinances. So it's 1, 2, 3. The 4th and the 5th lines separated to indicate the driveway approach at 407, and then also southbound to westbound Boston Street. So nothing like a little confusing roundabout way to describe an intersection. So what we are proposing to add, after removing those 2 sentences, is intersection with Boston Street and 407 Essex Street driveway from southbound Essex Street to westbound Boston Street, and from westbound 407 Essex Street driveway to northbound Essex Street, right turn on red prohibited. So it's not changing anything, it's just simplifying the language.
This is just a simplification of the language that we have here. Any, let's see, where are we in Ward 4 right now? We're in 2. Any questions or concerns around that change? Okay, we'll move along then.
So then Essex Street, intersection with Hawthorne Boulevard and Washington Square West. So this is the intersection right outside of the Hawthorne Hotel.
Sorry, point of clarification, Chair. This is a repealing of item number 3 in section 1, which correlates to, I've lettered them all in Roman numerals. This is number 10 on the drop-down, Essex Traffic Control Legend at Hawthorne and Washington Square, right? Those are the two that go together. Thank you.
Messy language.
So this is additional messy language, yes. And we are proposing southbound to add the ordinance and sign. The Essex Street approach, it is currently in the ordinance, but we would need to add signage. And then same with the northbound approach. It is in the ordinance, but there is no signage here.
So in this case, we'll be adding an ordinance and a sign to the corner there at Old Main Street. Is that, am I looking at that right?
Coming from Brown Street down towards the pub, yes.
That right turn.
If you were to turn onto Essex where it's one way.
And the reason for that prohibition?
I believe it was just due to the pedestrian volumes of people having the northbound, southbound flow to go up towards the Common and other tourist locations along that route to get their cookies.
Yeah. Good.
This would be protecting the pedestrians who are crossing at Old Main Street, correct? That's the thought there. Okay. Yeah. got
There's also
one
the
going
outdoor
towards-
dining that comes into play during the season.
Yeah.
We're all good there. We can keep going. Okay.
Okay.
Essex at Flint.
I believe it is right here. Yes, because Flint continues to
Yep, that looks right.
So we are proposing on Essex Street in sort of the northeastbound direction to add ordinance language and a sign at that approach. No changes to the other approaches on Flint Street.
So it would be an ordinance and a sign from Essex turning around taking that sharp right onto Flint, which leads to Chestnut. Okay.
Correct.
And the reason is that one, I'm guessing, is sightlines?
It is tight.
Bad sightlines with that building being built right to the sidewalk.
Yep.
And then part of it too, we don't think a lot of people make that turn compared to the others. So I don't think it results in any massive traffic issue there.
Great, thank you.
Any concerns on this one?
None, I just have to be able to talk to it. So
Yep.
understanding the reasoning is really important.
No, ask away, please. All right, if there's no other concerns on that, we'll move on to Essex intersection with North Street and Summer Street. So this will be the Witch House.
So at this location, approximately right here with the 0, in the southbound approach at North Street, we are proposing to add ordinance language and sign. And then in the northbound approach, adding ordinance language, where there currently already is a sign.
There's already a sign at Jerry's, adding an ordinance there, and then adding an ordinance and a sign at the Witch House.
Which this is the location that several people, like residents, have reached out to our department asking for this, just for you all to be aware.
All good there? Okay. We already covered Essex at Satella and Webb. I'm just going to skip over Highland Avenue for now. Councilor Cohen, do you want to talk Lafayette? Was there a specific Lafayette one that you wanted to talk? or is it all of them? Because you're typically here 30 minutes early to meetings. Councilor Watson-Felt travels the world, so I'd like to make sure we get through all the Ward 2s if possible.
Why don't we keep going, and we'll come back?
Yeah, then we can come back to that. Yeah, that's fine. So we'll go down to, I think, Washington Street's the next one, correct? Mason Street, Federal Street, North Street at Federal Street. North Street at Federal Street. Let's talk, you want to do North Street at Federal Street? Yeah.
So North Street at Federal Street is right here where the ramp meets North Street. So from Federal Street approach alongside the courthouses, we are proposing to add ordinance language and signage. On the opposite side of the intersection, there currently is signage, and we are just adding ordinance language. And this is a location, just to give a little bit of background, there are several folks that do take a right turn to continue down North Street. There is also the option to take a little bit of a skewed jog to continue onto the ramp to travel down to Bridge Street. Some folks assume that everyone is taking a right, and they have been, or at least we've been made aware in my department, that people will beep if someone is in the first spot in the queue and is not moving, but they're waiting appropriately to travel through in a straight movement through the intersection. So I believe even when I first started, this was something that the mayor's office reached out to us about, so it's been a topic of conversation for a while now.
There is no ordinance at, coming off of, I guess that's off of the Bridge Street, or what that is, Federal Street. Am I looking at that right? There is no ordinance, but there's a sign there when people are coming up that little slip.
When you come up the ramp, yes, there's a sign, but there's no ordinance language to back it.
And then on the other side, it would just be adding the ordinance and the sign. Councilor Watson-Felt.
Friends, I hate this intersection so much.
I won't take it personally. I didn't design it.
I use it every day, multiple times a day. I think I'll be really honest, the only way a right turn prohibition works there is if we change the timing of the lights in that entire intersection. People get really frustrated when they are waiting to take a right-hand turn, and it's waiting and waiting and waiting and waiting and waiting, and then they just go. And by the way, I have seen officers of the law do that in this town. Names remaining nameless. But I've seen it. It happens all the time. And also, you know, Councilor Stott and I have had a lot of issues with the timing after dark on the trigger taking the left onto North as well.
I know David himself was stuck in that trap as well. So.
It's like literally like 6 to 7 full minutes.
And I think there are some detection issues at that spot. There are some saw cuts that I can see at the Federal Street approach at least. So I don't know whether it's a fail in the detection system or if folks are traveling beyond and they're not hitting it for enough time to have it sense that there's a vehicle still waiting.
And I think if I understand correctly, all of the approaches there are sense detected.
I think they're in-ground detected.
So we have a major issue with that intersection. People blow off, almost all of them except the hard red, and in tourist season they just go through the red anyways when they're continuing straight from north to continue on to north. So I think I'm happy to support this because it's your recommendation as experts, but we have a massive timing problem at that intersection that has been raised multiple times and it has got to be fixed. Thank you so much. Love you.
So we're all good with that change off the ramp, I think, on that. And everybody okay? Any questions around the change on the right turn from Federal onto North Street? Seeing none, we'll keep going. We'll go down to Washington Street. Washington at New Derby. Councilor Cohen.
Thank you. This is half me, half Councilor Watson-Felt. So I first want to start with northbound Washington Street to eastbound New Derby Street, which it goes around the Hawthorne building where the bank is, which currently, so I want to put this out for discussion. Currently, I think there's good sight lines. It's not hard to take a right there. However, in the tour bus ordinance, we're going to put a, what do you call it, a 10-minute stop?
A drop zone.
Drop zone right there. which I think would make it really difficult to get around that area. So I just wanted to say, I was originally against making this no right on red, but now I think with the drop thing, we should do it. But what I really wanted to bring up, which I don't see, and I've been talking to several counselors about this. In my mind, one of the most dangerous intersections is coming down Norman Street, going east. So the post office is on the right, and you go around Riley Plaza, up Washington Street to go south. That, I think, whether it's just being in Riley Plaza or when there's a lot of people in Riley Plaza, there are so many times where someone is crossing the street and they're yelling at a car that is literally like just coming around that corner. People never stop going around that corner. If they think they can see 10 feet, they do it. And so I know it's not prohibited, but that's actually one of the ones that if I could just like pull down, let's make red on red, I would make that a red on red.
So you're referring to the Norman Street approach,
I would say when you're
where there is a right turn on red sign
going east
to
Norman
turn
and
after stop.
south on Washington, I believe that should be no right on red, because almost every time I'm at Riley Plaza, there are people in the crosswalk and there are cars coming and there's yelling and beeping, and I've seen, I don't know if you have, but I've seen many times, and there's always, panhandlers in that median strip. So there's always like a lot of activity there, and, I'm not a pedestrian as much as some of the people, Councilor Marcillo, Merkel, whatever. I just feel like when I've been down there, that is really dangerous. I've seen so many times where there's some kind of commotion with a car hitting one. So I don't know if we could add that, but I don't know how the body feels, but I think of all the places on this thing, I think it's as dangerous as any intersection. I think every other direction around that Riley Plaza, where the Derby is, whatever, is less of an issue than that one.
So this would be Norman Street, eastbound.
Eastbound Norman to southbound Washington.
Street, eastbound, southbound Washington.
Just clarifying, it's closing the full circle. It sounds like what
Every approach would be
would now be no
ordinance
term on red.
and signed, yes.
Correct.
Can you
And
talk
this-
through real quickly what, because I think that's when I think that this is the first example that Councilor Marcillo used when she brought this ordinance forward, and it's like the intersection that sticks in my head every time I think of this ordinance or this
We've come full circle.
order. Yeah, right. Can you talk through the conversation about why that change was not made on that spot there, and then I'll get to Councilor Marcillo.
Yeah. Sure. That one there, I think, number one reason was the backup of traffic being 114 eastbound, and then the sight lines are decent. There's probably some improvements that could be made, but I think the majority of it was the traffic flow through there. We do have the box there, which we try to keep clear at where margin comes in. But yeah, to my recollection, it was strictly the traffic flow, the fear of backing up Norman to Peabody or wherever.
Councilor Marcillo.
Really, to Peabody? Okay. That's a little dramatic, but okay, this is my intersection. This is the one. And yes, we need to stop the right on red. It is the most obnoxious intersection in the city for pedestrians, seriously. I have become more vocal there because I just get so angry at the number of cars that pull out to do the right on red, and they're boxing you in as you're crossing. They don't care. They're just inching towards you while you're crossing with the cross light. On the other side, as you get closer to the bank, there's so many cars that are stopped right on top of the crosswalk. right? That's another thing, not right on red, but boy, do we need to fix there, because that is really awful. And I feel so bad for people who are sight impaired, who are in wheelchairs. It's like a video game in that intersection every single day. And I do not understand why we're prioritizing throughput of cars right here where it's the worst. It is the worst for pedestrians. Also, we've been to so many flag raisings where the cars are just honking because the person's not doing the right on red. They can't see. They're like 4 or 5 cars back. But damn it, it says you can do it, and they want you to do it, and they're just leaning on their horns. It's so awful. That is the worst intersection. So yes, we need that.
Councilor Merkel and then Councilor Watson-Felt.
Thank you, Chair Hepworth. Not being a member of committee, I completely agree with Councilor Cohen and Councilor Marcillo. Yeah, I'm lots of experience there. I won't reiterate what they've both said. I just strongly agree with it.
Councilor Watson-Felt.
I'm also in agreement, but I think it's important to note that it is in part also for continuity, so that we can increase signage around all of those points of movement. We all know that Riley Plaza intersection is the worst intersection in Salem, and we've talked about it. Lieutenant Tucker, you and I have talked about it. I know the commission has talked about it. I've spoken to the chief about it. And it doesn't seem, given its size, its wide open space in the middle, it does not seem that there are any solutions except having multiple officers present, which is impossible to sustain. And I am asking here in my last year as the Ward 2 City Councilor that you take this up. I don't know what the solution is, but there has got to be one. I couldn't even navigate through that intersection myself on Friday night, and it was like the first weekend in June, and it was insane. And people were doing exactly what Councilor Marcillo said, which is like hitting cars, and people are blocking the intersection, and people are trying to go 3 wide in a 2-lane, trying to get through it. It's just a nightmare. And I'm honest when I say I don't think that prohibiting rights on reds is actually going to do anything, but I'm hopeful that with the increasing signage and hopefully increasing enforcement that we can, that something can be helpful there. But I am also just like asking once again, just a girl standing before you begging for help on Riley Plaza. Thank you.
Councilor Cohen, Councilor Presnowski.
Let Councilor Presnowski go first, because I'm going to make a motion.
Councilor Presnowski and Councilor Merkel, do you have something else too? Okay. Councilor Presnowski.
I think we all agree that that's probably the intersection from hell. There's no doubt about it. When they took out Riley Plaza, the rotary, which traffic flowed, they put this design in, and it hasn't worked since day one. All of a sudden, you have a cross intersection where there's a lot of vehicles and a lot of pedestrians, and since it was revamped, there's been more vehicles and more pedestrians. It's a major intersection in the city. The thing that I'm scratching my head about is whatever change we make, what is going to be the ripple effect? What's going to be the domino effect? What's going to be the collateral damage once you start putting red lights up? I can tell you from experience that if you stop the traffic long enough on Washington Street, heading towards the square at that intersection, then you gridlock Mill Hill. And it doesn't take much to do that. It happens every October. So once you start adding more vehicles, whether it's because of no turn on red or for whatever reason, there is going to be a domino effect, a negative domino effect. We're talking 1A and 114 intersections, people. So has there ever been an impact study or a traffic study that if we do this, what is going to be what's going to be the effect on the next intersections, on inbound, outbound? I think this needs to be really studied hard before we just, because none of us here are real traffic experts. Some of us here have experience in just because of our age driving in the city. But it scares the death out of me to know that if we slow down traffic in that intersection, what's going to happen with with the rest of the traffic in that whole area. I just think that we should have a professional impact study done specifically on that intersection to try to make it safer. It still bothers me that Massachusetts hasn't gotten their head out of their butt and let us have cameras at that intersection. We can't afford police officers there 24/7. There's no doubt about it. But if there was one intersection, if they gave us one camera, I would advocate with 24/7 to have it done at that intersection, because it's the hottest intersection for both pedestrians and for motor vehicles. And pedestrians and motor vehicles, drivers have responsibilities, pedestrians have responsibilities. If everybody obeyed the law over there, I don't think there'd be such a big problem. However, the pedestrians don't and the motorists don't. And what are we doing? This is what it's led to, making a change that may or may not have a very negative impact. I think if there's one intersection in the city that deserves more study, it's got to be this one, to see what we can come up with that's going to be a safe solution. Thank you.
Councillor Cohen.
Thank you, Chair. Although I do agree with Councillor Przewski, I think we need to do a study. The irony of this paragraph is that of all the 4 right turns, I think this is the most dangerous one, okay? There are people going around the Derby, don't seem to have as many issues. It's easy to see. People aren't, beeping their horns or whatever. So I'm going to make a motion, because I think, to Councillor Marcillo's point earlier, I think it's worth trying this. I am really worried. Maybe every 5 or 6 times I'm at Riley Plaza for whatever event is there, that someone is going to get hit. So I'm going to make a motion that we include in the right turn on red prohibited eastbound Norman to southbound Washington.
So Councillor Cohen moves after the word, after it says eastbound New Derby Street, adding the language Norman Street eastbound to southbound Washington.
Second.
Washington Street southbound. No right turn on red, seconded by Councillor Marcillo. Any other discussion on this? Seeing none. All those in favor? All those opposed? Saw 3 hands in favor, 1 opposed. Matter carries. I do want to be respectful of the city employees' time here. I think we have one more Washington Street. We want to get through that one more Washington Street, and then I do want to take public comment if there's any public comment to give. We'll move to Washington Street intersection with Canal Street and Mill Street. Washington Street, Canal Street, Mill Street.
That's
Okay.
actually Ward 5. I don't know if you want to do other.
Is there anything else in Ward 2 that you want to cover, Councillor Watson-Felt? I think this is it for Ward 2. Yeah. I don't think we missed anything else in 2. All right, so let's take up Washington Street.
Westbound, bottom of the 3rd page, is that 2 cuts?
Bottom of the 3rd page.
Lafayette Street?
Yeah.
This is,
The Lafayette, yeah.
which one's this?
The New Derby, at the fire station. And I'm also just looking at the repealing language to confirm I haven't missed anything.
Lafayette, the intersection with Derby Street and New Derby? Is that what we're talking about? Okay. Would you guys like to take up the other Washington first? While we're at Riley Plaza?
Yes, I'm sorry,
All right,
Chair.
let's-
Thank you. I appreciate that. I have a question about this one.
Let's do Washington at the other Riley Plaza one, I guess, the other Washington Street at Mill Street and Canal Street.
That's,
That's not Riley Plaza.
Well, that's north of Riley Plaza, right? Or south of Riley Plaza?
that's the Ward 5. And we can do that, Chair, but I'm also hoping that we can speak to the repealing language of Washington Street, the traffic signal right on red, northbound onto eastbound New Derby. That's Riley.
All right.
And I just want to make sure that we're all clear on what's
All right.
happening.
Let's take up Washington Street at Mill Street and Canal Street, and then we'll go over to that repealing language.
Okay. Thank you, Chair.
I'm actually going to suggest that we wait on this one, even though it's all in Ward 5.
Say again?
I'm going to suggest we wait on this paragraph, because even though it's all in Ward 5,
I mean, the amount of time we spent talking about this already, we could have been through it. Let's just get through.
I wouldn't mind getting through all of this in one night.
Let's just get through this section here, and then we can move along.
all right.
You talk through the rationale for this change.
So we're back at Washington Street?
Washington
Correct.
Street at
Okay.
Canal Street and Mill Street.
Okay, good. We jumped around a little bit there, so.
I know.
No, it's okay. So Washington Street at Canal and Mill. So right here, all of the approaches would be added into the ordinance, and signage. There is currently a right turn on red sign at the, I believe that's Mill approach. Okay.
So we'd be adding an ordinance and a sign at all 4 turns.
We weren't going to add no right on it from Mill, right? We're not going to?
To be clear, this is Domino's, Hampton Inn.
Orange is not an ordinance, not signed. So we would be maintaining a right turn on red there, it looks like.
Mill, oh, sorry. Mill going right on the canal, the recommendation was to keep it as it is, which is right turn allowed, add the right turn after stop. Add that.
So three would be right turn on red, no right turn on red, and then the one coming around the corner where Domino's is would be...
Right.
Okay.
The Washington, we're calling that eastbound or northbound, is we gave that one a lot of thought and study and input from different people. It's definitely going to have an impact on the flow, but that's the flip side is people tend to not even stop, whether it's green or red, and there's a lot of pedestrian there and traffic out of Canal.
Councilor Cohen.
Thank you, Chair. So I'm glad we're keeping that one. I want to go back to something that Councilor Merkel said. If you go southbound on Washington Street, so the Babe is on the right, and you come up to what is an intersection that Councilor Presnewski, Lieutenant Tucker, Director Kucharski, and I have spent many hours at, is where the daily table used to be. It's not geometric. It's really confusing. No one knows whether they can take a left on Dow Street or not. It is really difficult. However, there is, I think, one of the only 4 signs stop after, right on red after stop. And Councilor Presnewski and I were talking about this today. The sign is right under the signal. And most of the people who haven't been to Salem much don't know what to do, and they just stop, which is good. But it really does slow down traffic. So we're not changing that, but I want to just reinforce that I believe that sign works. And Washington to Washington. So we, 2 years ago, put a stop sign at Harbor and Washington, which is a really crazy little, at the corner of Lafayette Park, across from Habanero Cycles, and that's made somewhat of a difference. That little intersection is crazy. No one knows whether you could take a left, right, straight, or whatever. But when you come down and take a right around the hotel, which currently is right on red, and I do see trucks or whatever going through that, but I've been requesting for 3 years to put one of those signs up and test that. So I would like to come back to this, but I really do feel like the right Washington to Washington needs a sign, and to see if that would work. Because one of the things that we've talked about is, and Councilor Presnewski brought it up, if we had cameras, we could enforce this. Because if it's right on red, you're supposed to stop. And we have too many intersections where people can see it and just go through it, don't stop at all. So I'm not making a motion yet, but I might the next time we meet. I just feel like that one turn, I've requested for 3 years to have right on red after stop. And you add that to the stop sign that we put less than a block away, and I think that will make a big difference, because there's also a yellow sign that points at the crosswalk in front of Record Exchange. And so there's a lot of improvements that are done that I think will be enhanced with that one little sign.
The recommendation here in Washington is to add an ordinance change and a sign, correct? Okay. Make sure.
Well, I'll be,
Right? I think that's how I'm reading this.
no, it is. I'm suggesting that at some point I'm going to make a motion to take that out. Just put a sign there.
Okay, got it. So your recommendation here is eastbound Washington to westbound Washington Street, correct?
Yes.
It's westbound to northbound. It's actually, you're on Washington and you're staying.
Yeah, so westbound Washington to northbound Washington Street? Yeah. Corner of Washington and Washington. Any other conversation about this or questions? Councilor Morcillo.
I appreciate that, but I will say that's one that I've gotten emails on, that people want the no turn on red there at that exact turn. So I'm just curious if you've been hearing other things, like of all the intersections besides the one we talked about, Derby Street and Norman, that one was the one where people really wanted the no turn on red.
Councilor Cohen.
Yeah, I mean, I can only, judge by the interactions I've had with, people in the ward, but I think you, Councilor Morcillo, and I spoke about this. There was someone who lives in Ward 3 who walks their family to Saltonstall or some school. It could be a daycare in Salem Park, and I think you and I spoke about it, and I actually walked it with them. I think their issue is actually everything from Life Bridge all the way past Harbor Street, you know what I mean, like the park, and I walked that area, and I'm not going to say any of those intersections are pedestrian friendly. I'm agreeing with you, I don't think they are. I just am talking about going that other way. And the reason I'm not making a motion today is this is one that I've been focused on for a long time, that I really feel like a sign might make a difference, only because there's a sign going the other direction. But I've only had that one person who lives in Ward 3 who I know you interacted with, and maybe one other person. But I don't want to judge based on, how many, because a lot of people go to the Hive, and you know what I mean? There's a lot of people take the train, there's a lot of people walking there to get to wherever.
Councilor Jerslow.
Just to make it clear, did you make a motion? No. Okay.
Would you like to make a motion, Councilor Cohen?
All right, I'll make a motion to take the no right on red restriction away and put a sign there.
Councilor Cohen moves to remove the language stating westbound Washington Street from westbound Washington Street to northbound Washington Street. Did I get that correct? Westbound Washington Street to northbound Washington Street. Yep. Second by Councilor Jerslow. All those in favor? Any opposed? We have 3-1. Matter carries. All right. Councilor Watson-Felt had a question about some language that was removed on Washington Street. So what
Thank you.
page are we on here now?
It is page 2. It is the 4th item down. It is the last item on the repealing list.
So it says Washington Street traffic signal legend, right turn on red, northbound onto eastbound New Derby Street.
Yes, my question, Chair, is that I believe this correlates to the ordinance changes that we reviewed just as they pertain to Riley Plaza, but I wanted to be really clear that this repealing was simply to clarify language. It's not a change, right? This is just a poorly written ordinance from 85?
Yeah, I believe the goal is to remove any duplicate intersection references. So this would be removing that one approach and adding in the rest of the language that we had already discussed.
So just to be clear, we're repealing, but then adding it back in. So this one directly correlates to what I have item is 2028 under the insert.
Norman
Yeah.
and all that we just discussed, yep.
Exactly, thank you.
That one, I was going to ask Councilor Prozanowski, I scratched my head at that one because that was written when there was the rotary.
Still there.
But was there ever a light there at Washington and New Derby?
No.
No, I'm not sure why that was even in there, but, okay.
Washington and New Derby, would it have been a yield into the rotary? It must have been like a stop maybe, or?
If you came up New Derby Street into the Rotary, I'm not sure whether it was a yield sign or not, but people on the Rotary have the right of way.
Right.
So naturally, it would be. But there was never a traffic light there.
Yeah. I was there too, I remember.
And then I remember Lieutenant Tucker suggesting that we get a Rotary back over there, even if it's of a different design, to add to the safety, and I couldn't agree more.
All right, we'll go on to, let's see, we have, it was Lafayette at Derby Street and New Derby Street.
Thank you, Chair.
I think that's the last Ward 2 intersection here. And 1, I think we're on that borderland, right?
Which page are we on now?
Page 3, bottom, last one.
14 in the
Sorry, my page is printed so that when I flip, I have to look upside down. I didn't realize that until I had already stapled them. This one right here? Okay, good. Okay, so Lafayette Street, Derby and New Derby.
So that would be that, yeah, right at the base of the South River.
For the counselors, it's the last item on page 2, Lafayette traffic control signal legend, right turn on red.
Sorry, guys, yeah.
So for this intersection, we are recommending all but one approach have signage and ordinance. We're recommending no change to the eastbound approach because it is not in the ordinance and it is not signed, and we are not recommending changes.
To clarify, that means a legal right hand on red from New Derby onto
Lafayette Street southbound.
at Couch Dog.
Correct.
Any concerns about that recommendation? So it's a no right turn on red, ordinance change and sign for 3 intersections and none at the Couch Dog one. Councilor Watson-Felt.
Yeah, I am just surprised to hear that, given the amount of pedestrian crossing that happens there. And similarly, why you would then not be recommending a no right, or are you, I mean, why you would be recommending a no right from Lafayette on to New Derby at the fire department. So those two feel like a similar flow to me, specifically with regards to people crossing parallel down from downtown to the waterfront and back again. So I'm just curious as to your reasoning as to why one but not the other.
That one there, I'll go through them, but Lafayette northbound onto Derby has a green phase, has an extended green right turn arrow. So we felt that you got extra time there, and then when it was red, out of the concern for pedestrians, we'd have no right on red there. Derby westbound, right onto Lafayette at Engine House. Sightline issues there. When you're turning in, there's a lot of pedestrian flow in both of those crosswalks. The right from Lafayette onto New Derby, sightline issue to your left. You can only probably see about 100 feet, maybe 150 feet to your left. So that one there, a concern for pedestrians, of course, but you can see all the pedestrians pretty clearly there, but approaching traffic would be tough. And then lastly, the right from New Derby to Lafayette, we propose to keep that the same, put up a right turn after stop sign, but you can clearly see all the pedestrians and any approaching traffic from your left side. So you should be able to make that safely.
I guess my follow-up question would be, is that not an instance where we would have a lack of continuity at an intersection that may cause confusion? Or you think because of the signs stating after stop, you think that sort of covers us?
Yeah, I think the sign would reinforce that you have to at least stop, then proceed. That was also a spot where we wishfully thought would be a good spot for the illuminated no turn while the pedestrian phase is activated. So I would argue for that to be one of the, if we got those, be one of the first. That and a few others would be some of the first intersections for that type of sign.
Okay, thanks.
Councillor Cohen.
Thank you, Chair. So that right turn at Couchdog is actually Ward 5. So the other thing I was thinking when Lieutenant Tucker was talking is if you're going eastbound on New Derby, that light turns green. It's a staggered light. So that allows the traffic, right, to go before it comes back the other way. And I do think that clears pretty well. And unlike the other 3 intersections, it's really easy to see around there. They actually made it so that the outdoor dining does not conflict with that. You know, it has to be like a certain distance from the intersection. So I was just adding that to what Lieutenant Tucker said for the reason that one may make sense to have the signage and the updated signals.
Councillor Watson-Felt.
What was the nature of the accident that's noted here at that intersection?
Bear with me. I apologize. I don't seem to have that on my list. That could be an oversight, or it could be that it didn't have any bearing on the right turn. I tried to include the ones that didn't, include them even if they didn't have anything to do with the right turn, but I'm not seeing it. It's not jumping out at me here. One last comment too, part of the decision there. New Derby's very short, so the next traffic light, a lot going on there with bus stops and Dodge Street. So this would help clear it a little bit, whereas all the other approaches don't seem to back up quite as much. So they have more of space for queuing, but New Derby can be a real mess if it backs up.
Does anyone want to make a motion on that, or is it, are we comfortable with the language as it's written? All right. Any other questions on Lafayette, New Derby, Derby? Councillor Merkel.
Thank you, Chair Hepworth. Not being a member of committee, just had a question of clarification. So when you're heading down Lafayette Street from the point to Derby Street and you're going to take a right, I think it says add sign with a blue arrow. So are you adding a no turn on red sign there?
So this would be a...
Yeah, head down Lafayette and then turn right.
We'd be
You're
adding a
adding-
sign and changing the ordinance on that
Okay.
intersection.
To no turn on red. Okay, I through there a lot, and I really am glad to hear that. Thank you.
Spot.
Yeah, that one is, not the blue arrow, but to the right, yeah.
Yeah, you're looking at the, yeah, right where the South River is there. See that number 1?
See that, Alice, where the canal comes in? Oh, okay.
Councilor Jerslow.
Okay, I thought it was the other side. So you're saying there's no change, you can take a right from New Derby onto Lafayette at the Couch Dog, but coming down Lafayette, take a right onto Derby, you can't?
No right turn red anywhere on that intersection except for the Couch Dog onto Lafayette.
Why can't you put, that's another place that gets really backed up. I think a sign that says, stop, right turn, after stop. That's a pretty wide intersection.
It's up, you could consider that. We just felt that one has the extended green arrow for a right turn. Well, Derby from Congress can turn. You can also make that right. So you have extra time there, so we thought that was
From Lafayette to Derby, you can't take if there's a red light, you can't take it, but from Derby onto Lafayette, you can take that left.
So when the light changes, when Derby westbound gets green, they have an extended green arrow to go onto, when Derby westbound takes a left onto Lafayette, heading towards Wendy's, Lafayette also keeps the green arrow to go right onto Derby, so they get extra time for 1A. If you figure how 1A flows, there's extra time built in. So beyond that, we felt that due to the amount of pedestrians across Derby Street and then a lot that approach from Couch Dog area, we felt that was a spot.
All right, anything else on Lafayette, Derby Street, New Derby Street? All right, seeing none, take public comment, and then we'll take a motion. Apologize to every intersection that we haven't covered here today, but we will get back to these. Anyone in the room would like to give public comment?
I'll let you guys call.
Appreciate it, Bill. And then online, you want to raise your hand if you'd like to make public comment. Seeing none, all right, I'll take a motion from the committee. Councilor Morcillo.
Thank you, Chair. I move to keep this in committee.
Councilor Morcillo moves to leave this in committee, seconded by Councilor Jerslow. All those in favor? We are adjourned. Thank you, everybody.
We can have to adjourn first. Motion to adjourn.
Sorry, motion to adjourn. All those in favor? Any opposed? We are adjourned. Thank you.